There we go. So my name is Victoria Kelly. I am with the Homeless Leadership Alliance of Pinellas and the Pinellas Continuum of Care. And I am very grateful to everybody for joining us as we start as we talk about starting the hurricane season. And so without further ado, I will introduce Dominique Randall and Jessica Geib with Pinellas County Emergency Management and Health and Human Services. And I'll zip it and pass the torch to them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. One of those days. Many of you know who we are, but just for the sake of introductions, I am Dominique Randall with Pinellas County Human Services, Homeless Section Manager. I'm going to hand it over to Jessica for intros, but we're just going to talk through today just some changes for the 2024 season. If you're new or if you're back for another year, we thank you for joining us for this. It will be recorded and a recording will be sent out after. So again, thank you. If you have anyone to share this with, please do.
And good afternoon. My name is Jessica Geib. I'm with Pinellas County Human Services. I actually serve as the emergency manager for our department. So I spend half of my time working through all of the different programs and services we partner with in the community to get us ready for disaster, and then half of my time working with the emergency management department on all sorts of different projects. So thanks for joining us.
Great. We also have a couple others from Pinellas County, including Human Services and Emergency Management. So we're going to tap into them if we have any additional questions. And please, we want to hear from you all as we move through these slides. First thing we're really going to just talk about is a little bit of our local response and what we're doing as it relates to our unhoused population, excuse me, here in Pinellas when it comes to disasters. Real quick, most of you all may know this, but did you know that Pinellas County has a little over 280 square miles, and that's accounting for 588 miles of coastline. So we can very quickly become an island in the event of a disaster. We also are working with over 24 municipalities, and there's over 400 bridges across our county. So with the amount of people we have in our community, our response is very unique and specific to the community that we have here, and that's just for individuals like you and I. The second half of the presentation, we're actually going to be talking through some changes that are happening with graphics and messaging and things like that for everyone in our community. But right now, this is a small map of our evac zones across Pinellas County. And if you'll notice, those small little black dots are our main primary emergency shelters. So in the event of a evacuation, especially if we're looking at an A-B evacuation, we're looking at a large number of individuals that are currently in shelter and those who are unhoused needing to access our hurricane emergency shelters. What we've been doing over the past few months and really over the past couple of years is we've been taking time to meet individually with our emergency shelters. This year, we added in our transitional housing and some of our permanent supportive housing programs to understand what their strategies are, whether they have them or not, and how we can move forward with supporting those endeavors. We came out with emergency management team and myself to understand the layout of your properties, the physical constraints and limitations that there might be, and opportunities for growth that we can work on collectively, understanding and kind of setting the reality of some people have very well executed plans for when a storm comes, and also what needs to be prioritized when those events are happening. Right now we're at the end of May, so we're hosting our virtual event to kick off the season. This will be our third year doing that. So like I said, it may be something familiar to you, or this may be your first time joining us. Other thing I want to mention is our resource cards. They're actually printed on blue paper. You can see a copy of them on the screen. We are working on getting these delivered to all of our providers that are going to really be having that day-to-day interaction with our unhoused neighbors. If you are an agency who has still not yet received the blue cards, and I do know there are some, please send me a message. You can put your name. I'm going to ask for an email because I don't have everyone's email for me to be able to coordinate that with your location. This is the same blue card as last year. So some of you may have the version from last year. It is the same card that we are using for this year. This card is kind of works twofold. We also have a larger newspaper print for everyone in the community, but this is really the nuts and bolts of what's valuable and important when it comes to really seeking shelter in that couple days before a storm. So just like we talked about this today, we talked, if you remember, the storm Adelia back in September. You may not remember everything that you did in September, just like you may not remember everything you're going to be hearing today. But this card is intended for the unhoused residents, the 2-3 days leading up to the storm, to really get a grasp of like, where are they going, what options are available to them. So really lean into these as you're trying to get that communication out. So again, they're available. Let me know if you need some, and I will make sure to get you those connected to you over the next couple of weeks so that we can be ready and not chasing our tails. I want to talk next through what our coordination looks like as a potential hurricane or storm is coming to our area, how we communicate out to that. If you receive this email, if you receive the invite for this meeting, it was sent out via email last month, then you are on that coordinated call. We also have worked with a couple other partners to make sure that our list reflects all of our shelters, kind of day centers, drop-in centers, street outreach teams, things like that, to make sure that they are in the know of this next kind of process here. So what we're doing with homeless providers is the moment we know, and when I say we, emergency management, when they have an understanding that there's a potential impact to our local community, we're trying to start that messaging as early as 5 days out. We're not starting, as it's coming off the Cape of the Horn of Africa. We're looking at once it's actually in our area with an impact within the next 3 to 5 days. Depending on the size of the storm, mandates what our evac orders are, how long those evacs are going to take. Obviously, the more people, the more coordination, the more time we're going to need. So we're going to start up those emails anywhere from 3 to 5 days before an impending impact. When we will also start doing a virtual meeting. You are able to join us for any of those meetings. You are able to, we also, HLA does a wonderful job at recording those and sending out summaries of those if you're not able to join us, but we typically try to set them up on a same time schedule over the next few days as the storm approaches. We're going to be working on getting that meeting scheduled and also sending out a concise email to summarize what the reality or what the facts are at that time. We're not looking for clicks and we're not looking for likes. We're looking at something that's easy to digest and understand for anyone in our community. Once that 3-day it's coming closer, the impact is getting closer, we're looking at making sure that our outreach teams have those blue resource cards that I was talking about. They're starting to get the messaging out. The day centers have put them at the front lobby. We're starting to communicate. Do you have a plan? What's your plan? This is coming. Working on that 2 to 3 day shift is we're really trying to shift into making sure people are prepared for that storm and are aware of the resources. Gathering, we're working with our emergency shelters to gather any pre-storm census, what the evac plans are, which we already know for most of our shelters, and what the staffing needs may be. So I want to take a break right now and just talk about our special needs program, which we actually have Nick, who's actually the subject matter expert on our special needs population. But what we're looking at for our special needs residents, if you are working with permanently housed residents, that QR code in the corner is for you to share with those who are permanently housed. So whether they're in a prevention program, a rapid rehousing program, permanent supportive housing, if they are stably housed, that you can share that link with them for special needs registry. Special needs registries are for individuals who require medically managed facility placement. What does that mean? Something like they need refrigeration for their medications. They need mobility. They have mobility challenges that may require them to receive assistance getting up or down off the ground. Medication, individuals who are on dialysis, there's some very specific concerns with that. and also things like oxygen and other electrical equipment like nebulizers or sleep apnea machines, things of those nature. Also, anything with cognitive conditions such as Alzheimer's and dementia. So if you have residents, if you have clients that you're interacting with, again, that are housed, share this link with them, make sure they're registered for transportation and for placement, if needed, transportation and placement into the special needs shelter. For our emergency shelters, we've already spoken to you. What our plan right now is to kind of have that idea who might be on this list, kind of a short list. And when we come to that 3 to 5 day mark, when we're getting that census, we're getting a more accurate picture of how many the shelters have identified for special needs. And that's really just because the population is obviously moving around so much. They could be at shelter A this month, shelter B this month, in a hotel this month. So by having a better, more accurate registry and just getting that census as a shelter, that's going to help us be able to move forward. Nick, did I capture that all right? Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think you captured it perfectly. Just, yep, if they're permanently housed, don't hesitate to have them apply for the program if you think that they could benefit from it and they have any of these needs that are here on the screen. But no, you covered it perfectly. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot. All right. So on all these QR codes and opportunities are at the end too. And so now we're looking at that kind of 24 hours or less. And what we're really doing here is, you see this soggy wet picture of Pinellas Hope. I think this wasn't even related to a storm. This was just a regular day storm. But we start our recurring daily meetings of all homeless providers. Like I said, we kind of try to set a set time, sort of mid-afternoon, so we have a more accurate update how things have been going. We're looking at our hurricane shelter locations and arranging that transportation. Transportation is not always necessarily going to be to the same shelter, but we are doing like a staggered pickup where we're picking up from that facility and transporting them to the hurricane shelter, and also working on arranging that transportation back. Then we're working on maintaining those daily calls, making sure again that we're sending out facts, not rumors or clicks, and likes and things like that. Time is one resource that we cannot get more of. So the more we prepare and the more ready we are, to move forward. Public transportation is something that, again, that impacts all of us. Just want to do a reminder that pre-disaster, PSTA does open up free transportation prior to an event for the entire community. They will, however, stop when wind speeds reach 40 plus miles per hour, and they will reroute. It takes time to get those routes back up, depending on the disaster and the damage assessment, where the crews are, where the staffing is, things like that. So while that is a pretty good plan to get people to the shelter, make sure that if you have clients that you're talking through plans with, that they're doing that sooner rather than later. Waiting until, an hour or two before impact is not going to work with PSTA transportation. There really should be some of the first ones arriving into our shelters. Post-disaster, this is new this year. We're still working on finalizing this route and what it looks like, but this year we will be starting a new kind of alternative disaster route post hurricanes or post-storm. As those shelters are closing down, the hurricane shelters are closing down, there will be a route getting people to, I'm calling them kind of community hubs. So this isn't necessarily for our unhoused, it's for anyone in the community. But if I reside in, I'll use the shelter that I typically work in. If I'm working at Largo High School and I was at shelter at Largo High School, but I live up in Tarpon, it's going to be hard for me to get back up there, but I could get on this bus and be dropped off over at the Shepherd Center, and then might only have a half-mile walk to my residence, as an example. So there'll be a Tarpon, Clearwater, and a St. Pete location for drop-offs to help us kind of transfer people back into their communities. And also, well, no, it's not a guarantee. Uber does typically facilitate free transportation to and from with the discount code, but of course you have to have a Uber account and be eligible for that. During the storm, communication. This is a sample email of what communication looks like from us as an email. The daily email that we're getting directly from the Emergency Operations Center, where Jessica and some of our team are staffed throughout the whole storm. that daily email, you can see a version of that, what that looks like. And again, just the nuts and bolts. After an event, we're going to continue those calls for 2 to 3 days minimally. I think it really just depends on what kind of needs are popping up in the meeting and if the meeting is still of value to people. That's kind of how we have gauged it over the past couple of years. Discuss immediately, we're discussing when shelters are reopening, the homeless shelters are reopening so that hurricane shelters can close. They're first to know, first in, first out, first to know, and make sure that we're coordinating that transportation for those shelter returns and starting up that emergency alternate route. We also are trying to coordinate, and last year we had some great coordination with street outreach teams to come to the hurricane shelters and help us transition residents back into the community, but also to shelters. And we're kind of gauging what that additional capacity may be at a local shelter. Last year we had some pretty good transfers into 2 or 3 shelters that had additional capacity. Where I ended up having over 50 plus individuals moved into shelter that weren't there pre-disaster. We're also asking providers that are working with our permanent housed residents to check in with their caseloads. You guys all, most of you will have procedures and policies in place to do this already, but what can we do to support that? If there's feeding sites, if there's meal distribution, things like that, we'll be trying to share that information. And if there's any programs that have storm impact damage, kind of doing those assessments and understanding to capture what our community needs are. If we are really hit with a larger storm, that communication and that after event planning will obviously look much more robust. But typically, like I said, for the smaller events that we've had and have been fortunate with the last few years, they've been 3 to 4 days post-storm and just an end debriefing, whether that be via email or on a provider call. We also, and I should mention this, ask that outreach does check in on the residents because of course people are going to refuse. So you're not only coming to the hurricane shelter, right? You're going into that encampment that refused to leave 3-4 days earlier to make sure everyone is still, present and has the resources they need to help them move forward. So that's really what we look for as we're moving forward this year with our unhoused residents and some of our community. And I will turn it over to Jessica as she moves through some of our EOC changes this year. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dominique. And really thank you to many of you that are providers. I know Dominique and Adam and I have made a lot of visits over the past few years. And Adam and I talk all the time about how beneficial it's been to us to help understand your world and how we can better support you. And also just the incredible work you all do. So it's really been a wonderful opportunity for us to see that. So there are some changes coming out of the National Hurricane Center this year. So we just want to kind of give you some explanations of that. So if it looks a little different than you're used to, you understand why. Really the focus, and this has not been beneficial, is a lot of people are focused on the cone, right? And really the impacts of an event or a storm go really far out beyond the cone. So when you see an advisory come out this year, there's an example there. This is just a sample of something that they would have used for Hurricane Ian. You'll see that no longer do you just see the cone, but they've added those watches and warnings in front of the cone to really help you understand that even if we're outside of that cone graphic, there are still major impacts and hazards that may impact our communities. So it'll just change the way that looks. And again, if we get a system before August 15th, we'll still see that old cone, but this should roll out around that time period. Also, there's been some changes to the watching and warnings issuance times. These will now be posted on those intermediate advisories. So in the past, we've sort of all set our clocks right to the 11 and 5 p.m. AM PM advisories of when those forecast changes. But now 8 and 2 will also be included in that in addition to those watches and warnings. So again, we're trying to shift our thinking from just focusing on the cone to understanding what hazards and impacts really are outside of the cone. A new change also is the rainfall graphic that comes from the Weather Prediction Center. It'll hopefully be a little more easy for you to interpret what does the rainfall impacts potentially look like for our areas. And so now these will be updated a little more frequently and also a little more localized so that you can anticipate what impacts you may have to your facilities specifically if you are in some of these lower lying areas of the county. It's just a fun slide here, but as you're aware, names change every season, but they do rotate. So the last time we saw some of these storms was in 2018. So if you've been around a while, you may remember some of these events. Names are retired based on the severity of the storm. So if we had storms that didn't make a significant impact, they'll just recycle these names. But you can see here, Florence was retired as well as Michael. You all may remember both of those events. If we do go beyond those 21 named storms, they are no longer using the Greek alphabet system. If you remember from a few years back, that got a little confusing for folks. So they actually have an alternate name list that they will simply just work down if we go through this list. We all hope, of course, that's not the case, but and I guess this may be a good time to note, many of the predictions are high for this season. I know it seems to be the top news story right now. Everyone's talking about what an active hurricane season will look like. But the reality is it takes one storm to impact and change what our community looks like. And so while we hope it's not a very active storm, the year of Hurricane Andrew was not a very active storm season, and that changed the demographic of South Florida. So we always want to be alert and prepared, regardless of what predictions and models look like, because again, one storm is really the one storm that matters. So just a couple of key messages as you go forward and start your hurricane season plans internally. Know your risk, right? When we've met with many of you, we've gone over, what evacuation areas you're in, what are your flood zones, and what does that look like for your properties. So make sure you're aware of that. If you're not sure, Pinellas County has many tools that can help you navigate your homes as well as your facilities and understand where your evacuation levels are, etc. Of course, make a plan. It's not too late to do that. The earlier, the better. As we know, the stores quickly sell out of water and toilet paper around here. So make sure that you're putting those preparations into place now, both for your family as well as your organizations. And really, and this is where we're relying on many of you, is to help us help your clients so that they understand what their risks are and they can make those measures to prepare their own families and their own facilities. And then stay informed. This is really easy. Everyone hopefully has already downloaded the Alert Pinellas, Ready Pinellas app. That's where you can get all the up-to-date information. I believe there's a QR code there that'll take you right to some of this information. But as a storm approaches, that Alert Pinellas, Ready Pinellas, we will be pushing out that messaging as it changes, so you can really go there and get the most up-to-date, accurate information. Again, we're not click focused, so this will be information that's vetted and trusted, so that as you start to make decisions for your organization, you know that the information you access here is vetted.
I also wanted to add that that's also where we're going to get the primary information of what shelters are opening. So depending on, again, on the storm and the assessment of how many facilities are being opened, that's where it's going to be pushed out, as well as also through local news.
And preparedness is key, right? Dominique mentioned our hurricane guides are available. So if your facilities would like some of these guides, please let us know. We can get these out to you. They're available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And really, we try to simplify the messaging, right? Ready, set, protect. We know many folks may not have the resources to go out and purchase, a lot of products to prepare a kit. So it may be that just in time is what some of our folks are really focused on, being able to get ready. So time is that one resource we can't make more of. So this guide really is designed for that individual, right? Are we ready? Are we before the event set? Is it time to really start taking action and then protect? The impacts are here. What do I really need to know when there's not much more time left to act? So the resource guide really is broken down into those 3 sections to help folks really dig into what is most applicable to me and what can I really take away and prepare for my family. And then communicating risk, we talked about this, right? We really want to get away from focusing on the cone. If you see down there in that right-hand picture, Tropical Storm Idalia, Idalia was still 100 miles off of our coast, and we saw significant flooding both on our barrier islands as well as in our bay region. Over 2,000 structures received some sort of flooding damage from Hurricane Idalia, again, 100 miles off of our coast. So we know that just because we're not in that direct cone does not mean we are exempt from any hazard. So it's really critical that you're aware of what all of these watches and warnings mean. You can understand them and interpret them. All of the different maps that come out show you different impacts: winds, rain, surge. If you have questions about how to interpret that, we're available to help you decipher that. And then going back to the email that Dominique mentioned, it's pulling the information that's coming out of the Emergency Operations Center situation reports and putting that into plain language so that you as social service providers can understand what your hazards and risks are and understand what you need to be doing moving forward. So if there are ways that we can help make that easier for you all, that's really what I'm here to do, is to help sort of marry that information together for you guys. This is in the center of our guide. I think this just is a useful graphic that the Emergency Management Department developed last year to really help you understand what surge height flooding can look like. I think this is really a big misconception of when you hear, we might be looking at 12 to 15 feet of storm surge. That doesn't mean that 12 to 15 feet coming off of the water. It means 12 to 15 feet high. So this is really just to help you be able to interpret that depending on what zone you're in, so that when you hear, we could potentially be looking at that 5 to 7 feet of water from surge, you can go into your zone and try to understand better visually what that may look like in your community. And I just wanted to also mention, just kind of as a refresher, I know many of you are already well seasoned after the past several hurricane seasons, but we do have 3 different types of emergency shelters in Pinellas County. We have our general population shelters, of which anyone is welcome. We have pet-friendly shelters, which really are connected to Gen Pop shelters, but those are 2 locations where folks are able to bring their pets with them to keep their pets safe. And we work with our animal services partners on that piece of it. And then, as Dominique mentioned, our special needs shelters for those medically vulnerable folks that may be needing additional assistance. QR codes here. We hope that these are helpful and useful for you. Know your zones. You can understand what zone you're located in. A link to that hurricane guide that I mentioned to you if you'd like that electronically. And then Alert Pinellas, where you can get those up-to-date and accurate messages as they come about.
And with that, we really wanted to open the floor to some questions that you all may have. One question that I did see earlier in the chat was specific to how is communication being distributed to hotels for those who may not be connected with social service providers?
So we work with our Visitor and Convention Bureau at the Emergency Operations Center. They sit in the Operations Center with us. So just like we do internal calls with our social service partners, they're also doing those internal calls with our hotels, our restaurants, lodging associations, etc., and our visitors bureaus. So just like you guys get the information, they're connected within their networks to get that information directly from the Emergency Operations Center as well.
Great.
I would also like to add to that, this is Victoria at the HLA, that the Homeless Leadership Alliance does a lot of work to push information out before, during, and after storms on social media, so that anybody who does follow us or our partners on social media can receive that information without having to be tied to our email list.
Oh, yeah, okay, I see what.
All right, any other additional questions? Karen, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just also wanted to add that if it wasn't already mentioned, for clients that are enrolled in the Pinellas County Health Program, we also send out messaging through our Everbridge system. So they would be getting text messages. So we use that to notify our clients of potential closures. And we also use that for hurricane messaging as well.
I know that there had been a couple of people asking where to get the the blue resource cards or the hurricane cards. I know that you talked about that before, but could you revisit how folks could access those just to be sure everybody knows?
Absolutely. Reach out to me directly. I know many of your names, but not all of your locations. So either send me an email, give me a phone call. That way I can try and plug you in over the next couple of weeks on my rounds. I have them in my car right now. So wherever I'm at a meeting, I'm trying to distribute those and pop in at different sites and locations. I can also work on getting the news printed, resource, the full hurricane guides as well. So just send me a message, and we'll get connected. Thank you. And hearing no additional questions or comments, our information is here. So please reach out if you have any questions. Reach out now. Like I said, time is something that we cannot get back. So as that storm approaches, we all are starting to go into overdrive to make sure that our community needs are being met. We want to make sure that your needs are being met as well and that we can hear you. So our information is here attached, and we want to thank everyone for taking the time for joining us today. HLA, Victoria, I don't know if there's any additional information you wanted to share today, but thank you.
Thanks, Dominique. Yeah, there is just a little bit of information that I would like to share. We are working right now on a survey for providers as we prepare for this hurricane season. We will send that out to all CoC providers so that we can get a better idea of what your needs are, what your neighbors' needs are, so that we can plan better to respond better as a system this year. So please be on the lookout for that. And when you get it, please do complete it, because again, it's really important that we have that information as a system. So be on the lookout. And I just want to echo what Dominique has said. Please prepare early for this season. It is expected to be a severe season. So please prepare. Make sure that you are sharing the special needs registry with every resident of your housing program. Please make sure that you are informing your guests if it looks like a storm is on the horizon. And please make sure that you are on the lookout for, are aware of the communication coming from the CoC, the Homeless Leadership Alliance, Pinellas County Emergency Management, and of course, the National Weather Service. And that's really all I have for you today. Thank you all very much for joining us. I will do a last call for questions. Please raise your hand, come off mute, put your questions in the chat. And otherwise, we'll go ahead and call it a day. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Dominique. Thank you so much, Jessica. Really always appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone. Take care.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. And hopefully we don't see each other too soon at one of those hurricane meetings.